there.
I think this is interesting because the Lane Kiffin name is being thrown around, and while I think ultimately you got a better chance of winning a national title at Auburn than you do at Ole Miss, I don't know that Lane Kiffin entertains that. I think if you look at the legit who they should go after, I love Hugh Freeze at Liberty. I love Bobby Petrino, and I love Deion Sanders. To me, those are the three. Like you want like Deion has got to be a guy that I think is going to be a big roll of the dice because he's never coached at that level. But when you talk about recruiting against everybody in America, and when you put a guy at Auburn that can recruit against anybody in America, they got the same Jimmies and Joes that Alabama got. They get the same Jimmies and Joes that Ohio State and Clemson and all these powerhouses have. And I think that's what you're gambling on with Prime. And I think Prime has a wherewithal of hiring good coordinators and just letting those guys coach versus trying to rule the roost himself. So I really like Prime as a follow-up to the kind of coach that I've heard Bryan Harsin was. I think it's exactly what that program needs from a personality perspective. So that's got to be one. And then you look at Hugh Freeze and Bobby Petrino. What they do just flat ass works, boss. There's dudes there's to me there's coaches that recruit from within their own personality and because they're authentic and because they're likable people, real people. And then there's coaches that recruit well because players know they can go there and put up monster numbers and win ball games. And I just think that Bobby Petrino and Hugh Freeze are two of those guys that if you're going to accept one of them's flaws, I don't know why you wouldn't accept the other one's flaws. And I think Deion Sanders is the other guy, outside the box, possibility that I think they should consider immediate. Now, Prime ain't going to Wisconsin. Prime ain't going to Nebraska. But in the Southeast Conference at Auburn, ooh, look out. And if Lane Kiffin does leave and go to Auburn, Ole Miss better dig into that one as well.
All right, Chad. What's the blueprint?
I can't see Lane Kiffin leaving where he's at. I think that's not even a lateral move. I think that's taking a step back from where he's gotten Ole Miss. I mean, even this year, you lose your great quarterback, you go and get one out of the transfer portal, and a kid in Jackson Dart playing at a super high level. I think he fits into the culture at Ole Miss. I don't see him going over to Auburn, given where he's at now. Now, the Deion Sanders one is interesting to me because I see him, and I could be extremely wrong, but I see him as a guy that fits really, really well where he's at, picking off one or two big recruits here and there, drives an interesting culture out of the box, I think is what you said, Clint. But he could just be close enough to the box where it would work. And he would get some dudes that would come there and they'd have some moxie about them. And it'd be an Auburn team that takes the field, unlike any other Auburn team we've seen in history, really. So that's an interesting one. The one that I've pulled up, and we talked about it a little bit last night, and I think it's a really good option, would be Matt Rule. Some of the things that you had said, Clint, was a guy that can recruit from anywhere. He did that at Baylor. A guy that can build culture very quickly. He did that at Baylor. A guy that can take a team that's in ruin and bring them to the top. He did that at Baylor. Then he goes and he, tests his luck there in the NFL. But I think Matt Rule is a guy that has the headspace to go in and be hard-nosed enough to deal with whatever's going on behind the curtain there, but also be able to get a team ready to go out and put a really good product on the football field on Saturdays.
I love that, man. I love that, Trevor. I'm with you 100%, man. There's so much value in a guy that's coached it and recruited and had success at a place that doesn't have all the advantages, right? I mean, there's something there. I'm with you. Matt Rule should be at the top of that list as well.
I'll be shocked if Matt Rule coaches this year. I'll say that. I'm with you on Coach Prime, except I hope he comes out to Arizona State. I love what I watch when I see him. I'd be curious, and a lot of the ADs that I've spoken to, and I'm sure you guys have talked to, when there's openings or if they're preparing for an opening, they're also looking at the landscape of this ever-changing sport. NIL, transfer portal, can transfer anytime, roster rebuild. Because to your point of like, you can decimate a program pretty fast. You could also flip it. Look at SC.
Yeah.
4 wins last year, top 10 in the country right now in the first CFP poll, sitting pretty good. So I'll be curious. And a lot of times that means to me like younger is what I hear and what I feel when I'm talking to athletic directors, like people that are malleable, like on the cutting edge of those things. Because as we know, the calendar's changing in college football. Like NFL is a way better job in terms of like any semblance of balance in life. I'd be curious to see if we see more hot coordinators get hired in this cycle of coaches based on what's going on with the sport than the Bobby Petrinos of the world coming back. Because it's not like Bobby Petrino's Brian Kelly right now, sitting in Notre Dame. Where's he at? Missouri State, I think. So I never heard that name for this opening. So intriguing to